Okay, let's get round to part 2 of the image processing webinar. If you remember last week, we went through how we uploaded various videos, how we could resize them, etc. Now we're going to look at a bit of database integration. We're going to look at how to store those image names into a database table. We'll be looking at how to bind those images to a particular user ID. And then we'll be using that data that we create to start having a look at the swiper, masonry and slideshow components along with Lightbox. So we've got a fair bit to go through today, and I suppose let's just straight away make a start. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to build an extra database table, I suppose, so that we can store those images. So I'm just going to pop my old friend Navicat up. If you remember, we have 4 tables up till now: contacts, the telephones, telephone types. If you remember, that's where we had the mobiles, home phone numbers, etc., and a users table. I'll just pop that users table open. You'll see there's various users created, and I'll be doing everything today based around that Brian at login, and we've just got to remember that user ID is 13, and we'll see why that's important later because we'll be doing some cross-checking on it. So let's just do the very simple creating a new table. We're going to have an image ID as a primary key. Mark that up as a primary key. We'll have that auto incrementing. We'll have a second field which is going to be the image name, and we'll just make that a varchar, and we'll give that plenty of length. We'll give it 120 characters. That I imagine would be enough for pretty much everything. And then lastly, we're going to have a user ID, and that will link these images to the particular logged in person at that material time. So I'll save that. We'll just call it user images, let's say. Let's save that. Straightforward enough, fairly simple table creation. I'm just going to double check user ID. I just like to try and keep those the same because it's a little bit quicker in Wappler because it'll automatically match the field names. So using user ID in both cases. Okay, so where we're going to go from there, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to look at creating a page that we're going to manage these images in. So let's straight into create a page. I'll be creating a PHP page as usual. Let's add our frameworks. Sorry, I forgot we already have that set up within our project definition. So it's automatically added in App Connect for us, Bootstrap, Font Awesome, and jQuery. So let's save that as, and I'm going to call that just, let's say, images. .php. Obviously those scripts we created last week, I'm going to recreate from scratch because they should be really quick to do because we're using a slightly different environment here. So we've got our images page. We're going to just do a very quick container. We're going to do a row and we're going to do a column. And just to pretty things up a little bit, let's just pull that down the page a bit and maybe give it an outline just so we can see what it's where it is and let it stand out a little bit more than it would otherwise. Give it a nice red border. We should be able to see that quite nicely. Okay, so this is an image upload that we're creating. So I'm going to go straight into popping a form into there. And if you remember from last week, we can then go straight into a Dropzone. Go on, Wappler. Okay, not quite sure what happened there, but it's not actually showing us a drop zone. It's only showing us a file upload. So I'll just do it the slow way. I'll do it just give me one moment. We'll get there eventually. I'll manage to get a drop zone working. Never had that happen to me before. Just give me one moment, please. We know the drop zone components there. We're using them last week. File input form. Make drop zone. We're getting there. Okay, I'm not going to panic too much at this stage. It may well be that just it isn't quite refreshing properly. And anyway, for what we need to do, we can use that component. But there does seem to be some sort of issue there. We certainly don't have any JavaScript ever shown, so maybe it's just a little Wappler quirk. So let's not mess about. We've got that. We need a button after that for an upload. And we'll just give that a bit of color, just so we know what we're doing. And we'll save that. And that button, obviously, sorry, needs to be a submit button, doesn't it? Save that again. We're going to be using a multiple upload here. So I'm just going to change the name of that. And sorry, don't forget those square brackets at the end to indicate that we're uploading an array rather than just the click one. I'm still confused why that isn't showing, but let's not worry at this stage. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to go straight over to our server connect side, and let's just create a server action to deal with that upload. So it's just call it upload images. Our globals, let's just go to that linked page, which is called images. Our form is form 1. Let's import it, and there we are. We can see it's pulled those files. It's multiple files, and it's a file type, which is exactly what, file, which is exactly what we would expect. Okay, let's save that. Right, so we're going to, first of all, as always, we're going to need a server connection here. So that's our server connection and our standard server connection that we've been using up till now. Let's drop a security provider in, because we're going to need that soon. So our security provider, and our security is just called security 1. And now we're going to have to perform that upload action. So in file management, file upload, and we're going to give it a path of user files, and this is where we're going to just get a little bit more complicated, because we're going to now put it into a specific subdirectory. I'll just make sure that we're picking up that right post. We've got our security provider up here. that will provide us with security1.identity as the ID of the user. So I'm just going to amend that. Path so that each user has its own user files area. So that for me would be user files /13. And for your file name, don't forget you've got the little checker there. We'll just have name extension. And let's get rid of any spaces that were there. I'm just going to save that now. So we've got the file upload. We're going to do our choose files up here. It's going to be posted over to here. We're going to open our connection, implement our security provider, and we're going to upload those files initially into a unique directory. Now we're going to need a repeat, because obviously we've got multiple files being uploaded, and that repeat will be based around our file upload. I'll just output a couple of, well, the name anyways, just in case we need to double check on any debugging. Quick save on that, the usual warning. I don't know whether anybody's noticed, but if you want to just put something in there as a holder, you can just stick a comment in there, and that will suffice for this. You must have something within this section. It's something I use quite often, just as a little workaround until I've decided exactly what my code's going to say. So we've now got those files uploaded. What we're going to do now is we're going to have to start doing successive load files and then save files. And then at the end, we're going to write that information back to that database table that I've done. Just while you remember, we've added a new database, haven't I? A new table to the database. I just need to refresh that schema so that Wappler knows about those new tables. Everybody happy up till now? So, into our image processor, and we're going to load an image. And where's that image coming from? It's coming from our path. So that's our repeat. In each case, this will be the path that we're looking for. That will be the image there, location for the file load. And then we're going to do some processing on it, and then we're going to resave them. And I'm going to create 4 different images for each of the uploads. So we're going to have a repeated steps of, first of all, we're going to size that image. And I'm going to make that image 1024 wide maximum. We leave height at auto. Remember, if you put absolute values in those 2 fields, it will scale that image to exactly that size, and it will distort the image if the perspective is different. And just in case we're uploading any smaller files, we'll just click the upscale, which means if the file isn't 1024 wide, it will make it that way. So we're okay up to there. Now we're going to have to save that image. So we'll go to image processor, and we're going to save it. Where are we going to save it to? Well, we're going to start with, where did I decide? User files. Now we're now going to have to reference this security provider up here. And that becomes a little more complicated because we're within a repeat region here, so that security provider information is actually a parent to the information down here. So we're actually going to have to prefix that with $parent security one.identity. And of course we've got to double brace those that expression. Is everybody clear about the prefix of the dollar parent, etc. At that stage? Anybody's got any questions, please just shout up. Now I'm going to add the other resizing actions after that, but just before I do that, I'm going to go over to the database insert. And the reason I'm going to do that is that it'll actually show this in a graphical form. So if we go into our database actions and we're going to insert, add our options, we're now inserting it like user images table. What information are we going to be inserting into there? And obviously we need the image name. So if we look at our repeat here, which is our repeat of all our stuff, we can select the name field there. And that will insert the name of the image. Notice I'm only inserting the name, not the full path, because we're going to have different images in slightly different paths, all of the same name. Because what I'm going to be looking to do is have a full image, a mid-size, a small, and a thumbnail, which will all be within the same tree, but will be in slightly different directories. So we can effectively programmatically create that path down to the directory level, but the file name will always remain the same. And the user ID we'll be getting from that security provider. So security provider identity, and you'll see there, as I did before, because that is a parent of the repeat, it will prefix it with $parent. So we've got our image loaded, we resized it, saved it, we'll resize it again now. And we'll make this one, let's say, 640. And then we're going to save that again. I'm just going to pop back to there. I'll just stick a temporary path in there for the moment. I'm going to go back to there, and there was our path. And I've actually missed something out, because what I want to do at the end of that identity is we're going to call this large. So it will be saving to effectively user file stroke 13 stroke large. And this one we're going to do the same thing, and I'm actually just going to copy and paste these to make life easier. This one we save image to mid, and we're going to do a resize again, and this time we're going to be, let's say, 240. I'm picking these fairly arbitrary numbers. Going to resize it again. Obviously we don't need to worry about upscaling, because we know we've scaled it bigger earlier, so we don't need to keep upscaling or worrying about upscales. We're going to save that again, and this time we're going to call that small, and then very last one we're going to do one last resize, and let's make that 120, and we'll do that image save again, and we'll call that thumb. And that should, fingers crossed, now allow us to upload an image here. For that image, when uploaded, to be passed over here, and each image we upload, we should create 4 different copies of it, a large, a medium, a small, and a thumbnail. They should be saved in a tree of subdirectories down underneath the user files stroke user ID tree, and then lastly that information should be inserted into the database. Just checking, yep, so that we have the image name and the user ID, and obviously the image ID will be auto created through the auto increment. I think we're about ready to make a start. I'm a little bit concerned what's happening here still. I'm totally confused why that isn't showing as a drop zone. It might even show as a drop zone when we run this live, but for the moment I'm just going to open that up in a browser and see what's happening, and it isn't showing as a drop zone. I'm just going to double check we don't have any errors there in the developer console that might give us a clue what's going on. And there's our problem, of course. Such a basic one. We've got to change that to a server connect form, haven't we, before that will show. There we saw it's a drop zone now. So yeah, it's very simple omission there. Forgot to change that to a server connect form, and that's why that image upload wasn't showing as a drop zone. Let's connect that through to upload images. Oops, wrong button, and let's save that. Okay, so now everything should be in place. Perhaps just make that a validate as required, just so we don't try and upload something that is empty. Yeah, our button should be set to submit. That's great. Yes, you're right. Oh, UK, right. DevTools is your best friend. When I look back to when I first started this sort of web stuff 20 years ago, and we didn't have tools like that, finding that particular bug could have caused a day of trying to work out what the heck is happening. Then again, most stuff took a long time because we didn't have wonderful tools like Wappler to be able to do it. But yes, yeah, absolutely. If you don't use dev tools in your development, you're just making life very difficult. One last thing, obviously, we require to have a user logged in to be able to calculate these sizes. So, calculate these paths, because we're making reference to it. So what we would normally be doing is we'd then be going into the security provider, okay, I really am going bonkers today. Who's stolen the security provider? Oh, there we are. Security provider enforcer. What we should be doing now is setting it to restrict so that this page could only be run by a user. Because obviously if there isn't a user logged in, then none of these functions will work correctly, and it is a function that should be restricted specifically to a user. I'm not going to do that just because it makes the development side a little bit late. That's something I always add right at the end when I know that everything's working correctly. I'm sure those of you who use it know that the issue about having to log in within Wappler. So I'm just going to leave it out for the moment, but it's important that you understand that that needs to be done. And I'll just give it a title just to tidy things up. So we go into our browser now. let's go to datalogistics.uk. Come on. Right. Still logged in from an earlier login. So we know for definite now that we have a user logged in, which means that we should be safe now to run this and see what happens. We'd love to think this is going to work first time, but you just never know. Sorry, we're a little bit busy today, so you might hear the odd phone ringing in the background. I'm going to pick my lovely Christina and hit upload, and we've obviously got a problem. Okay, well, it doesn't appear that we've got any console errors in there. So it suggests that perhaps that didn't actually submit properly. So let's have a quick look back at the code. We're in the form, and there we are. That button isn't actually in the form, I don't think. It was outside. Let's try that again. Yes, quite agree, Churn, that she always brightens up my day when I see a picture. And she's young enough to be my granddaughter just about, but I'm still class her as my little guilty pleasure. It also brings me some consolation when the code doesn't work. So we've got a bit of a problem here because we're not actually getting any console errors at all. So let's see if we can work this back. We're uploading files. While we're in there, I'll just mention a couple of little things. It's quite interesting. If you click and unclick multiple there, you can actually see the square brackets are automatically removed and put in for you by Wappler. Thumbs is obviously about seeing a thumbnail when you've dropped an image in there. So in this case, you can see the thumbnail in there. Just get rid of that secondary text while we're busy, and then our button is definitely set to be a submit button. We're definitely doing a post action. We've got our action set. I'm just going to double check that we have the link to the correct form. Everything looks okay there. Let's just resave that. Let's just give it one more try before I throw my head in my hands and go to help. Okay, I'm gonna just pop some usual diagnostic. I just had a thought. I haven't got any confirmations set for success or whatever, so it's quite possible this is actually working absolutely perfectly. Just what we're not doing is seeing any form of confirmation when it happens. Sorry, just completely forgot that one. So on success, we're going to, let's just have a basic success message. We'll just say uploaded. And on error, Let's have a warning to say error. Okay, so we save them. Let's run that again. Let's pick a picture. One for the girls that are watching. Upload, and actually everything was working absolutely fine. It's just I forgot to actually add a confirmation message. So what that means now is if we have a look in Navicat and have a look at those user images file, if it's, that bit's working properly, there we are. We see that we've got some failed ones there, which are maybe from earlier. I'll just take them out. Remember, we've added pictures of Christina Aguilera. That's those two. And I think that image one is George Clooney. I think just to be safe, I'm going to take everything out. I'm going to remove them. And I'm just going to do that action once more, just to be absolutely confident that this is doing what we wanted it to do. So I'm going to remove that. A random picture for a change. Anybody watch the TV series Alias, was it, that she was in? Great TV series. Let's hit the upload. Confirms that's been uploaded. We'll just refresh that table. And yeah, we can see that image has been uploaded. We have the user ID and it's been allocated a unique number. So we know that that's certainly been inserted into the database correctly. Probably should have put a form reset at the end of that just to do it. I'll do that just to tidy things up, shall I? To get into these good habits rather than bad habits. So on the success, we're also then going to reset that form. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick glass of water. A bit dry today. I would like to think it was too much alcohol last night, but unfortunately that wasn't the cause. Okay, so delighted that was actually working in the first place. Now let's have a look at the image side of things. And what I'm going to do is I'm just opening up File Manager. And we've got user files, 13. You see now we have, first of all, the original image upload, which always is going into the root of that directory tree. So it's in user files 13. And then we have the large copies, the mid-size copies, the small ones, and those thumbnails. Generally a good idea to actually do a tidy up and remove these images from the very root, because you don't know what size they're going to be, and that's really easy to do. If we go back into our action, we can actually just use the delete file action, which is actually in file management if I remember rightly. File remove, and our file path on that one would be, we'll start with the name, and that would be user files. Actually, I'm gonna, because that's in the wrong place. Anybody pick that one up? That's going to put it with inside the repeat, and we want it actually after the repeat. So we're going to have the remove file stage will be down here. Our file path will be just giving a pause here because I'm thinking, of course, once we're outside that file upload, we're going to lose that, aren't we? We're going to lose the actual file name. So at some point we need to store that and use that at the later stage. Actually, no, we can put it there, because if it's removed, then it won't do any harm anyway if we try and... Oh, here's a question. I don't know the answer to this. If we put a file remove in and the file isn't there, does it throw an error or does it just carry on? And I'm really not sure on that one. So let's find out, shall we? So our file to remove is going to be user files. Then we've got the file name. Excuse me one moment. We've got a lot of noise happening today. I'm sorry about this. Identity. And then the name. And that should be the location of that original file that we've uploaded. And whether this is going to throw an error or not, I'm not 100% sure. So let's just give it a try and see what happens, because I'm a great believer in learn by mistakes. So let's fire that up. Let's upload it, and yeah, it appears to have worked fine. So what we've done is that's deleted the original file upload that hasn't been scaled, that we have no idea what the size is of, and that means it's going to be clogging up the server with unused elements. So there we are, we've got the file upload now, and I've got some files uploaded against my profile. Of course, the second half of this is all about how we're going to present that information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop these pictures into the home page in the various components to show you how those components work. So we can close that now. We're happy that our image uploader is working correctly. Let's go into our home page. So what we need to do now is to, again, with reference to that security provider, we need to get all of the images associated with that particular user who's logged in this case me, and we can then show those in a Bootstrap element. So let's first of all start with that very basic query that we're going to be using to get the images, and we'll just call it get images. Steps dead simple. We're going to create a database connection, and then we're going to do a database query. Simplest of queries, it's going to be a query the user images, and our condition is going to be that the user ID is equal to, whoops, slow down Brian, and not quite that simple. Forgot we need a security provider in there. And now when we do this, we're selecting our user images, and our condition is that our user ID is equal to our security provider identity. So that will recall all of the images that are stored against the profile of the currently logged in users. Let's just add that server action into the page itself. So data, server connect, call it con images, and our server action for that will be that one we've just created of get images. Don't need any parameters at all, because say we're doing everything with reference to the security provider. Everybody happy now? You're all very quiet today, so I'm hoping you haven't all gone to sleep. So let's start a couple of different components then. Let's start with the swiper, shall we? So we're going to add the swiper component. I like that cover flow effect. Our slide source is going to be our get images query. Let's autoplay it. We'll just do one image at a time for the moment. We'll come back to those other elements at a later time. Okay, so we're going to add a slide, and inside that slide we're going to have an image. And that image is going to be found through a dynamic path. So if you can remember the path that we used before, it's going to be user files. We already have the current user ID details pulled in, if you remember, in the con get user. So we should be able to reference that directly now with user ID. Although actually we probably need to reference that in full. So let's just play safe on that. Get users, data, query, user ID, yep. So that would read for me user files 13. And then we're going to need the image name of that particular image. I'm just going to pop in that code view so I can see it properly. User files 13 / image name. We've actually missed out part of the path there because that should be large, shouldn't it? If all goes well, that should allow us to see that swiper control showing those images as large images in the there we are. They are 1024 wide images. We've only got 2 in there at the minute because of course I deleted them all out earlier. So I'm just going to quickly add a few more in. So if we open up that image uploader script that we had before, I'll run that, and let's just add, no, already got you in. Let's upload them. I think I actually used the wrong script there. That was the old one from last week, wasn't it? Or was it? We got an error there, and I think I know where that error came from. I think it was to do with that delete step that we put in. I'm just going to take that out there. And just confirm that. We can come back to that later if we have time. Am I going mad, or that last file that we created was called images and it's not in that list for whatever bizarre reason? Just give me a sec. I'm just going to quickly quit out of Wappler and go back in again because I'm not sure that that screen has actually refreshed properly when we loaded that file in. Either that or my memory is completely and totally failed as to what the file name was. Yeah, it was. That images there. That's one for George and Co to have a look at and work out why that didn't refresh. Just give me one moment while I just turn my phone down. It's an interesting bit of fun that I've got one of these ring style doorbells, and if somebody goes up the door it alerts my phone, and my good lady is actually talking to somebody on the phone, and so she's not noisy, she's standing in the doorway and actually tripping the camera. So that's why I keep hearing a doorbell in the background. There we are, those files are uploaded. Now if we go onto the home page, I'm just proving that everything in my world is gender neutral. I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm back to a woman. But that's a pretty uncontrolled and messy looking screen. Those images are probably far too big, and we could probably have used smaller ones there. So let's just go back into index page, because we have these different sized images now, we can very easily change the size of those images. When I oops, sorry, hit wrong button. So we were on large there, so let's just make them I think I called it mid, didn't I? So that should reference those different images in a different folder, which are smaller in size. And with look now, you can see they are now smaller images. If I go into the settings of the swiper, at the moment we've got one per view and one per group. Let's make that 1-3. And we'll see the effect of that now. Quick refresh again. If I got that the wrong way around, sorry. We see this effect we get now where the main image stays in the middle. You have 3 images on screen in total, and as it scrolls across you see them effectively flow through. That's a clever flow effect. There are various other effects we can use. Let's just say a straightforward fade, and while I'm busy I'm going to add some navigation and a scroll bar into there as well, just so we can see it in action. See, again, we're only showing one image on this occasion, so you don't get a terribly good effect, but these are fading in now. But we have the option to, that's interesting, we've got George stuck in the background there. Yeah, it's an interesting effect, that, isn't it? Because it's not actually clearing the image in the background. So if our images are different sizes, then we need to try and force them into a similar size. We could do that very easily by just setting parameters within the image. Or even making them responsive might have the desired effect. Let's have a look. No, it doesn't. So it, see there, we need to try and force those images to be the same size. Will auto height do that? Auto height doesn't do it. So what we would have to do is manually set those image sizes to make sure that they're all the same size. Probably my mistake was I've set them to a width as opposed to a height when I resized them. In hindsight, what I should have done. to, or what I should have done is set them to a fixed height rather than a fixed width. Is there any way to show count a total of images uploaded and then deleted, just an uploaded Yes, there is actually, if I remember rightly, a return of that detail, and just give me a second. If I go back to that images, success, when we see the file upload, we're going to have to set it. What would we have to do is output the size of the repeat as a variable, and then pick that up within the app connect end. So what I'll do is I'll rather than spending time going through that, because I'm running a bit short on time, I'm a day odd, I will email you directly with that one if you want, or message you on the forum. But certainly all you've got to do is return the counter files from your server action. Right, so that's a bit messy, that one, and what I'm going to do is just take that out now, and let's look at the slideshow, because they're very, very similar in terms of how it works. We're going to have dynamic slides. Again, we can just pick that same image source that we had before, and then the image itself comes from, and we've got to give it that long path again. Should really have copy and pasted that from the last one, but never mind. Oh, user files. User ID. And then we need the size after that, and then that image name. Anything that's dynamic needs to be within curly braces. And we could then add the thumb section in as well, and just have that as thumb, which I think is what I called it. Let's save that. Let's run that, and fingers crossed. Doesn't look massively different at this stage to the original one, other than its size is better. We can also add some additional information in here, so we give it a title of images of a person. I'll not say images of me. These could obviously be dynamic as well, so we could actually, I'll tell you what we'll do, we can only link things that are within that data set. Because I actually quite like the effect that this has. Okay, being thoroughly hateful and spiteful for some reason that isn't showing, because we forgot to put some quotes around it because we're in App Connect. General rule, quotes in App Connect, no quotes in Server Connect. There we are. We see we get this nice little band along the bottom, which shows us the title and any text we want. And I'm just at the end, I'm going to show you something I'm currently working on in a live setup, which will show how that works very nicely. Just going to close a few of these down. I also said we'd look at masonry. It's very, very, I mean, all of these components, to be honest, are very, very similar to use. Very, very simple to set up. But the other one that I said I would do is masonry. and you can see exactly the same setup. We pick up an expression, which in this case is our con images query. The unique key is the image ID. Let's have a bit of animation, and we should, just on the basis of that alone, be able to okay, we're not getting that, so let's have a quick look and see if we can see why that's not. There we are. So respond with status 404 for the DMX Masonry JS. For some reason that hasn't been automatically loaded. So let's pop into App Connect, DMX Masonry, and let's just upload that manually. Okay, that's uploaded now. Let's run that. Oh, that's his favorite icon, so that's certainly nothing to worry about. So why haven't we got that? Let's have another little look. What have I missed out? And it's going to be something pretty simple. Let's just have a quick look at my notes, just in case I can spot what it is. Perhaps we should have an image in there. That's what I want to do. I'm going to just put a hold on that because I can look that up in another site. And I'm just having a little bit of a mental blank on that one. Give me 1 second. This is actually the site I said I would show you at the end. And yeah, of course, I need an image in there. In that case, I'm using an anchor image, and then we've got the image within that. So I might as well show you, while I'm in here, I'm going to show you how to do that on this particular site. Little bit of variety. So we've got our masonry, exactly as we had on the other site. We've got our connection, we've got our unique ID. Within that, we've dropped an anchor image in, and then within that, we've got an image, and the image as that dynamic source. Slightly different in this case, but exactly the same style. Reason I want to bring you this, it's still a work in progress at the minute for a French customer. However, all of those components are set up and working in a more presentable fashion. So if I just run that now, the swiper version will show the images and also some text, and we've got it in cover flow. So it's quite an effective way of showing multiple images, where in this case each image has its own description, or most of them have, because obviously work in progress. This is actually a remake of a old Dreamweaver site that I wrote in about 2011. So there's a few little issues to be sorted out, but that's a really great effect. Slideshow we looked at before, and it's similarly, we've got this slideshow effect. We've got our buttons either side, and we've got our text for each image comes in separately on the back of that. The last one, the one that I was playing about with, is the masonry. And all that does is that arranges the images. Now, this not a great example, this, because it's intelligent enough to work like a jigsaw. So if you have different sized images, it will very cleverly work out what is the best way of displaying them to give you the minimum space in which it is. And yeah, I've confessed I've played about with these, Tom, which was the best slideshow, swiper, etc. And I confess I've used swiper in the past and I like it, but I think on this site, because the reason I've got all three is to make mine which I prefer, I really think for this particular site the slideshow works much better. But it's really down to the individual information. If you want an example of a swiper one, this site uses the swiper quite heavily. Similar effect, showing rooms available for rent for students. And you'll see again, this is a swiper, but it allows us to have all of the information pulled across quite nicely in terms of what it is. So they both have their uses. They're both really brilliant components, and it's just a case of picking the one that's best for you. I think I've covered everything now. We're right bang on the hour, so I think it's probably time to say thank you to everybody again for joining me. Those who didn't read the announcement that I sent out earlier, unfortunately this will be the last webinar for a little while. I've had to pull the plug on the mobile one for various reasons, time, expertise, etc. Got a busy summer coming up, a few holidays, and I'll hope to be back sometime mid to late September with a complete new suite of things, hopefully a series of webinars based around developing mobile applications. And for those of you who have joined me over the last 6 weeks, thanks very much. I keep seeing the same old faces coming along, and really appreciate that. And say I'm always there available if anybody wants to ask me any questions within the forum. So usual shameless plug. If nobody has any questions, then I'll call it a day. Okay, guys, speak to you on the forum, and say I'll be back in not too long, I'm sure.